How to use end-of-term intentions in Nakisa Lease Accounting. Hi, Amina here. As an accountant, I need to track and communicate our lease decisions clearly. End-of-term intentions help me manage how leases are handled at the end of their terms, whether we return, extend, or purchase assets. After logging into Nakisa Lease Accounting, I navigate to a lease component in need of my attention. Here, I see new fields that support managing end-of-term intentions. The contractual end-of-term date is the deadline by which the business must inform the lessor of its decision regarding the lease. The contractual end-of-term period is the number of days prior to the ROU end date when the lessor must be informed of our decision. In this case, the agreement specifies 90 days, so I enter 90. Doing so automatically calculates the contractual end-of-term date as the two fields are linked. I could instead set the date, and the system would calculate the period. After entering all other required information, I'm ready to send this lease component for approval, which is granted off-screen. Once approved, the activation group is created with a new end-of-term intention field. By default, the intention is set as to be determined. This means the system cannot infer an intention from term decisions, and no user has set one manually. A natural lease end intention indicates that the business plans to return the asset at the end of the current right-of-use term. Additional intentions are system-driven. They can't be selected manually, as they are determined by term selections within the activation group. At this stage, I leave the intention as stark to be determined, since the business has not yet made a decision. In the Terms and Conditions tab, I can see several options that may affect the end-of-term intention, such as termination and purchase options. But for now, no decision has been made regarding those terms, and I proceed through the approval process. So the activation group is activated with the end-of-term intention still set as to be determined. As time progresses, system notifications are triggered when approaching end-of-term notice dates. These reminders give users time to ensure an intention is determined and set. Notifications increase in priority as the notice date approaches and continue until an intention is determined. Notifications are delivered to users subscribed to all categories within the activation group's notification tab. Now let's see how end-of-term intentions can change over the lease term. I click Event. I enter an event name, modification date, and reason. I click Submit. This opens a draft activation group. The end-of-term intention is still to be determined. In the Terms and Conditions tab, I review the termination option. I mark it likely to exercise to see the effect. The end-of-term intention automatically updates to return/vacate, since the lease will end early. Because this intention is derived from term decisions, it cannot be edited manually. However, I decide not to exercise this option. So I uncheck it. Next, I review the purchase option. I mark it likely to exercise. Again, the end-of-term intention updates automatically, this time to purchase. But I decide not to proceed. So I uncheck the purchase option. The intention reverts back to be determined. In fact, the business secures a cheaper insurance rate for the vehicle. So I unexercise the existing insurance term. And navigating to the new term, I set it to likely to exercise. At the same time, the business confirms the asset will be returned at the end of the ROU term. So I change the end-of-term intention to natural lease end. I then send the activation group event draft for approval. All changes made during the event, including end-of-term intentions, are recorded in the modification summary. End-of-term intentions are always derived from term decisions where possible. For example, if a rental car is written off, I can initiate a casualty event, where the intention will then automatically update to return/vacate. I can also opt out of using end-of-term intentions by using default field values. To do this, I navigate to the main menu. I select Default Field Values under the Admin section, where I can configure a default value for the end-of-term intention field and override the baseline behavior. This can be seen in a new activation group where the end-of-term intention now defaults to not applicable. This ensures no notifications are sent for this activation group. However, I still retain the ability to override the intention manually on a case-by-case basis. The timing of notifications can also be configured in Nakisa's financial organization structure. From the main menu, I select System Configuration. Having selected the end-of-term determination, I can see that notifications have been configured to trigger 90, 60, 45, 30, 14, and 1 day before the contractual notice date. Notifications are only triggered if the end-of-term intention remains undetermined. And that's it. We've seen how to use end-of-term intentions in Nakisa Lease Accounting, from setting contractual dates and updating intentions to managing notifications and configuration. Thanks for watching.